we've seen other factions come and go. Factions like Evolution, the Four Horsemen, and DX. All factions that dominated during their time, but fell rather quickly due to greed and, of course, power. But the Bloodline was different. The Bloodline ensured its entire longevity by focusing on one common goal, and that was family. Family was all that mattered, and anything else was just in the way. Roman prided himself on ensuring that his family ruled the roost. In every aspect of the game, Roman Reigns knew exactly what the common goal was, and that was to get on top and stay on top. And the only way you can do that is to rule your kingdom with an iron fist. Anyone who opposed the Bloodline or got in the way were instantly dealt with. Mob mentality, wolf pack mentality, full-on anarchy. But a controlled chaos is what Roman aspired to have. And that's what he had. For 4 years, Roman Reigns dominated WWE, pulling them out of the dark ages of the pandemic era and into the new regime. Roman Reigns was champion, the golden boy. But yet, he's a king without a kingdom. There's an old saying, empires fall. There are no exceptions. And despite the hard armor of the Bloodline and the shield that created it, there was a chink in that armor. There was a crack. That crack came from the king himself. His own paranoia and incessant need of people to prove themselves to him created more cracks in their armor than anything that Sammy, Jay, or Jimmy, or even Solo could have done. His incessant need for people to acknowledge him, to prove to him that they were worthy of being in his presence, is what ultimately destroyed the Bloodline that he loved and created. This is what led ultimately to his destruction. This is what took him down and left him broken, cracked, and humbled. Or maybe he needs to be humbled. Nobody likes Roman in the WWE at this moment. And I don't think Roman really cares. What Roman cares about is taking back his rightful place. When it comes to the Ulafala, you can't just take the Ulafala. It is something that is bestowed upon you. And it was bestowed upon Roman by his father and his uncle. God rest their souls. The Ulafala also has to be earned. While you are chosen to be the tribal chief, you do have to earn it, which is what Jey Uso made sure to make it clear to Solo that he is not the true tribal chief and that nothing he says can prove that that is so. Just because he has a bloodline that he commands doesn't make him the tribal chief. He knows that the family only recognizes the true tribal chief, and that is Roman Reigns. With all that being said, I got a little ahead of myself. So let's go back. When Roman Reigns lost to Cody Rhodes in such an epic fashion, it seemed that Roman decided that this was a time for him to leave. He cut off all communications with his wise man and even his family. So no one knew exactly what was going on with him, what he was headed, where he was headed, how he was going to do things. No one had any understanding of where the bloodline stood and if there was still a bloodline. So that following Friday, when Solo announced that, he basically was taking over, he didn't make an announcement. He more so, claimed he'd forgiven his brother, Jimmy, hugged him, and then that's when Tama Tonga showed up. And we realized that there was a shift in the regime. Roman still said nothing. He had no response to anything that anyone was saying. weeks go by. And as the weeks go by, new members of the bloodline pop up in droves. And as Paul Heyman tried many times to contact his tribal chief, get clarity and understanding, because Solo was making moves without the approval of the tribal chief, Paul Heyman was left distraught. With no communication from his tribal chief, with no direction, he did what he thought was best and what was safest, which was to go along with the new tribal chief, Solo Sikoa. I think the final blow for Roman Reigns came from when Jacob Fatu was introduced into the bloodline. Once Jacob showed up, all hell broke loose. The wise man was put through a table, and not only one, but two members of the original bloodline were destroyed by the new bloodline. And Solo was demanding acknowledgement, just as his predecessor. A lot of people ask questions about Solo and his intentions, and why he's running around calling himself the tribal chief. But Solo is only doing what he had been taught to do: take over and dominate. Who do you think taught him how to do all the things that he's been doing? How do you know, or how do you think the moves that he's been making, the changes he's been doing, and everything that he has done, he learned that from only his predecessor, Roman Reigns. He's been his enforcer, his sort of right-hand man, without him having to do the heavy lifting of what Jey Uso and or Jimmy had to do. Solo was a silent observer. He watched, he learned, and then he took over. He has his own way, and despite how ruthless and conniving Solo is, he did learn from the best. So while Roman may be fighting against something that he himself created, I'm sure deep down inside somewhere he's quite proud of Solo and the king that he's become. As far as Roman is concerned, the only issue is the Ulafala and regaining the power that he rightfully earned and was bestowed upon him. He tried to talk it out with Solo, but that didn't work. And when Jey Uso got involved, things took an even more sinister turn. You see, Jey Uso left the bloodline due to a lack of respect. Roman still hasn't all the way given that respect, but at the same time, it's still Jey Uso's family. And he's watching them fall apart from the outside. So, out of love for his brothers and for the family itself, he went to Solo to talk to him. Maybe he could reason with his little brother, but he didn't take into account that the power of being the tribal chief, it changes you, and not for the better. In fact, it is for the worse. Drunk with power, as they put it. In Solo's case, you've been ordered around for 3.5 years. You really had nothing else given to you. You had opportunities to become a champion or to be something other than just the enforcer of the bloodline. But you were marginalized and kept in a box because that's where Roman needed you and wanted you to be. You did as you were told. And now that you have the freedom to move however you want and to govern this bloodline the way you see fit, that kind of power can't be given to a person who doesn't know how to wield it. And in Solo's case, he's drunk with power. Now, you heard a little snippet of why Solo chose Tama Tonga, Tongaloa, and Jacob Fatu. And you have to ask yourself, well, why is that? Jay made it very clear that these three weren't exactly the cream of the crop when it came to the family. In fact, he alluded to the fact that these guys were your black sheep. They were the ones who were the outcasts, the one on the outskirts. And in Solo's eyes, using these guys to proceed forward is his way of reuniting the family. And he has offered a place in his bloodline to every former member of the bloodline, with the exception of Jimmy. if I recall. He didn't formally invite Jimmy back into the bloodline. But you also have to think of it from a place of logic. Nobody is recognizing Solo as the true tribal chief in their family because there is a system in how you earn the tribal chief moniker. Solo has bypassed that by having members of the family who would naturally be outcast, or for whatever reason they've been outcast, and he's using that to maintain himself on top of the mountain. Otherwise, he would not be acknowledged as a tribal chief at all. So, after Jey Uso poured his guts out to his little brother, that was all denied. And Solo made it very clear that he was either with us or against us. And Jey Uso made it very clear that if he decided this was the path he was going down, that the next time that they met, it wouldn't be so friendly. This ultimately sealed Jey Uso's fate as Intercontinental Champion. The Bloodline got involved and cost Jey Uso his championship. He lost everything that he worked so hard to build himself up to. Because of that, Jey Uso owed them a receipt. That following Friday, the Motor City Machine Guns won the right to challenge the Bloodline. So they went after them with a vengeance. It's a pretty decent fight. But of course, Solo and Jacob got involved and were getting ready to cost the Motor City Machine Guns their one shot at that championship. The original Bloodline members of Roman Reigns and Jimmy Uso all came out there to distract Jacob and Solo. But Jey Uso came out there to cost him the championships. A receipt owed, a debt paid. Now that we're caught up on everything that's been going on with the Bloodline, let's talk about Survivor Series and where we could potentially be headed. You see, Survivor Series is always shaping up around this time. And while Crown Jewel is a pay-per-view that WWE books for, Triple H has been pulling double duty when it comes to Crown Jewel and Survivor Series. He's been giving you little pieces here and there to set up where this could possibly go. Now, like I said, there is a king, a fallen king, without a kingdom. And because of that, he now has to try to rebuild or add in comrades to be able to face off against his former enforcer, now turned enemy, Solo Sikoa, and the new Bloodline. Now, Friday, Jey Uso is going to talk to Roman Reigns. They're going to have a little heart-to-heart. This past Monday, we saw Jey Uso and Jimmy have their heart-to-heart, and Jey Uso made it very clear. Under no circumstances is he coming back to be listening to orders and to just be ordered around like a child. He's a man, and he's going to do what he believes is right by him. He doesn't mind being in the family, but he's not a puppet, and he won't be ordered around, and he won't be treated without respect. The moment he gets wind that any of that is beginning to happen, he's out, and everybody's on their own. Jimmy agreed. And so the date was set for Friday for Roman and Jey to have their moment, their heart-to-heart in the ring. This also led to the Bloodline trying to attack them again, which the Usos were able to team up like my distinguished twins were back together again. And it was like riding a bike. They hadn't been together in a year and a half, and now here they are, back in tow, double kicking people in the face. And we love that for them. But back to Survivor Series. They're slowly but surely building these teams. Now, we already know that the Bloodline sign is already set. It's more than likely going to be Solo, Jacob, Tonga Loa, and Tama. Those are your Bloodline members currently. And those are the guys that are going to more than likely represent the Bloodline in that match. And Roman already has 3 of his Bloodline members, and he's missing a 4th. But we got an inkling of a possibility of a 4th in Sami Zayn, another former Bloodline member. While Sami may not be blood, he was indoctrinated into that family and accepted And Sami did everything in his power to prove to Roman that he loved him and he was there for him and for that family. But when things didn't always go Roman's way, he would always target Sami and force him to prove himself time and time again. No matter what Sami or anyone said, Roman never truly trusted anybody. And that was the problem. And like I said, that caused most of the cracks in the armor of the bloodline. But that being said, this is your bloodline team. But there's going to be a hard road to convincing the bloodline members that Sami Zayn is going to be on their side. Furthermore, Sami hasn't agreed to join the bloodline. In fact, it's quite the opposite. It seems he doesn't want anything to do with them either. But it seems like Sami Zayn has been sucked into this fight whether he wants to be in it or not. And while Solo is playing politics and using and manipulating Sami, it looks as if the Usos believe that Sami could be taking sides and going on to Solo's side. So just as Jimmy had to prove himself to Jay, it seems as though Sami's going to more than likely have to prove himself to the other bloodline members that he can be trusted and that he actually does care. Even though Sami believes that this isn't his fight, he's being dragged into this whether he wants to be there or not. I believe eventually Sami Zayn will accept the challenge and be a part of this bloodline, and they will have the original bloodline versus the new bloodline. A Bloodline Civil War Part 2, if you will. And we'll see who the dominant faction really is. Is it the fallen king or the new king? But you guys comment in the comment section below what you think about the Bloodline Civil War possibility. Do you think Sami's going to join up with Roman Reigns, Jey Uso, and Jimmy? Do you think Jimmy and Jay are going to finally, accept that Sami isn't a part of the new bloodline and that he does want to actually help? How do you think Triple H is going to set this up? Because the story is there, but the end result, obviously, that hasn't been done yet. So we'll have to wait and see how this plays out. But I'm telling you guys right now, this is going to be a Bloodline Civil War. And it's going to be the original bloodline versus the new bloodline. OG versus the noobs. And more than likely, the OGs will win. Something has to give when it comes to this new bloodline bullshit. And there has to be a shift. Survivor Series is the last PLE of the year. So I guess we'll find out if the original tribal chief gets his Ulafala or not.